Hi, we are going to learn some shortcuts to proving that triangles are congruent today. We're going to start with the SSS postulate. It says if three sides of one triangle are congruent to three sides of a second triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So this is helpful because you don't have to prove all three sides and all three angles of the triangle are congruent. Just proving the three sides are congruent on two triangles will be enough to demonstrate that the triangles are congruent to each other. So let's look at an example proof of this postulate. We're going to do this, we're going to skip number 1 here, we're going to do number 2. So I'm going to draw a little T-chart to begin with statements on one side and reasons on the other. And my first statement, as usual, is going to be this given information. So I'm given that RS is congruent to UT, which is shown with the bottom and the top double tick marks in the picture. Also, RT is congruent to US. That's also given, and that's the left side and the right side that are marked congruent. The reason that we can say those are congruent is because it was given in the problem. So already I'm starting with two sides from one triangle being congruent to two sides from the other triangle. In order to use this SSS postulate, I need to know side, side, side from this triangle is congruent to side, side, side from that triangle. I'm missing the last side, which is this side TS. And that side TS is the same on both triangles because they share that side. You could say segment TS is congruent to segment TS, or segment TS is congruent to segment ST. Both are correct. And the reason that we can say something is congruent to itself is that good old reflexive property that we learned about a while back. Remember, your reflection in the mirror looks like you. A reflexive property indicates that something is the same as itself. Okay, so now I have all three sides of one triangle are congruent to all three sides of the other triangle. So now I'm ready to state this statement that I'm trying to prove. Triangle RST is congruent to triangle UTS. The last statement will always be what you're trying to prove. And the reason I know the triangles are congruent is because of my new postulate side, side, side. So that is a lot less to have to prove than doing all three sides and three angles like we did last time. So the other postulate that we are covering today is called the side angle side postulate. If two sides and the included angle, which means the angle in between those two sides of one triangle, are congruent to two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So let's do a proof using that postulate. Down here at the bottom, we're going to do this one. And I'll start by writing a little T-chart. Statements here and reasons here. So my first statement is this given information. V is the midpoint of segment YZ, and V is the midpoint of segment WX. I know both of those because they are given in the problem. Now, if I know V is the midpoint of YZ, then that's going to help me figure out that YV is congruent to VZ, because the middle point means it is dividing that segment into two equal pieces. So I'm going to say YV is congruent to VZ, and the reason is because of the definition of the word midpoint. Similarly, since they told me that V is the midpoint of WX, that means WV must be congruent to VX. WV has to be congruent to VX. And the reason I know those are congruent, again, is because of the definition of midpoint. Now, I need one more thing to be congruent in both of these triangles in order to say they are congruent triangles, and this is going to be this angle in the middle. You can see in the middle you have an X, and the angles across from each other at an X are called vertical angles. And so those angles have to be congruent as well. So for number 4, I'm going to say angle YVW is congruent to angle XVZ, and that's going to be because they are vertical angles. Oops, vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. Now, number 5, the last statement, is going to be the statement we're trying to prove here. Triangle XVC is congruent to triangle WVY. And we can say that those two triangles are congruent now by side, angle, side. The side, angle, and side of one triangle is congruent to the side, angle, and side of the other triangle. All right, that's it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.